Good evening, everyone. As Martin said, my name is Kathleen Lilienthal, and I'm the co-chair, Ellen Rotter is my other half, of the Architecture and Design Alumni Cabinet. I would like to welcome you all to this year's Pellerin Traveling Fellowship presentation. And thank you all for venturing out tonight. It will be well worth your time, and afterwards you can go cheer on the Tigers. But before we get to this evening's presentation and announcement of this year's fellow, I would like to take a few moments to thank the members of the Architecture and Design Alumni Cabinet, the university, and as well as the graduate professors. We would not be here today to listen to the fellowship presentation if it was not from the support of our fellow alumni and the university, and especially the dedicated work that the professors have done with these students over their graduate career in order for them to become successful and well-established LTU alumni. With all of your support and interest, we can accomplish our goals and achieve our success and unite together as alumni. We are always looking for alumni involvement to magnify the architecture and design alumni presence in the design community. I would also like to recognize Scott Schell, Tracy Sweeney, and Ellen Rotter for their contributions this year in the Pellerin Selection Committee, as well as Martin Schwartz for all his input and coordination. It's greatly appreciated. This fellowship provides a unique and educational value to students that have commitment and determination to enhance their design community. Earl W. Pellerin was the first professor of architecture and the founding dean of the College of Architecture and Design here at LTU. He believed that travel is an important part of an architect's education. The LTU Architecture and Design Alumni Cabinet founded this fellowship in honor of Earl Pellerin. His belief holds strong today, reinforcing that travel is and should be an extension of one's architectural studies. The Pellerin Traveling Fellowship honors one faculty-nominated meritorious graduate student annually. These nominated students have demonstrated exceptional talent in their studios and their thesis work and have proven to be at the top of their top design students in their studios. Eric Klooster was announced the 2012 Pellerin Traveling Fellowship recipient and is here today to present his travel studies, which was to research the development of the 2012 London Summer Olympics facilities. The overarching concept of the development was to utilize the Olympics as a catalyst for regeneration in East London by creating socially, ecologically, and economically sustainable piece of city. The goal of the travel is to garner an understanding of concepts and strategies that were utilized in this objective at an infrastructural, urban, and building scale. The anticipated outcome of this research is a discussion of strategies that could be implemented in the city of Detroit as a catalyst for regeneration and urban activation. Everyone, please welcome Eric Klooster.
That's fine with me. Okay, I first want to take a moment to thank everyone on the selection committee for this opportunity. It was a fabulous experience to gain in my architectural education continuing beyond graduate school. I agree with the ethos of the fellowship that travel is an essential ingredient to the education of an architect, and I'm again truly humbled for this opportunity. I also want to thank all my professors who had a big part in my design education here. They've been paramount in my education and my development as a young architect, and I'm greatly appreciative. My research is a continuation of the work that I did in my master's studio, which was focused on urban activation with the event as the catalyst. I was interested in Niagara Falls specifically for my master's studio and utilizing that event for urban activation and regeneration, and that study continued on into this research and is a continuing path of my interest in design. For this, I traveled to the City of London to research the Olympic Village for the 2012 Summer Games. The Olympic Village was developed in Stratford, which is a district in East London. Stratford was being plagued by some similar conditions that are plaguing the city of Detroit right now, with low economic development, high unemployment, high crime, poor housing and health conditions. And the Olympic Development Committee was targeting this area for regeneration, and they wanted to use the Olympics as the catalyst for this. The mayor of London has targeted Stratford and East London as a main ongoing regeneration project in the city of London. And you can see from some of these images that I took while I was at the site of some of the remaining post-industrial character of the region. The region developed during high industry times, and since the decline of the manufacturing industry in London, these areas have seen a decline in their urban standards. And some images of what the Stratford area and the specific site of the Olympic Village looked like prior to this regeneration commitment. This is the site for the Olympic Village. It's a large area. It was a brownfield site in the lower Lee Valley. It's at the base of the River Lee. It's part of a wetland system based around that River Lee that extends up to the north to the Hackney Marsh. And one of the overarching concepts in this development was to create a piece of city, is the term that the designers used for their goal. They wanted to capture all the elements of the city and bring it into a ecologically, culturally, and economically sustainable piece of city in East London that can be the catalyst for the regeneration of the area. My analysis for the site specifically looked at its urban qualities and how that can lead to its regeneration. Specifically, its access to public transportation, pedestrian mobility through and across the site, its utilization of public spaces, the density and the planning for the park and the surrounding areas, how the development has integrated with natural ecologies, some of the design typologies that are utilized in the site, how these structures have been integrated into the urban spaces, and the successful activation of the urban spaces from these developments. First, looking at public transportation, the City of London has probably one of the strongest public transportation systems in the world. It's something that they're very proud of. And you can see this is a map of their subway or tube system. Majority of the city is covered by this system. They're proud of the fact that most spaces in the city are within a 20-minute tube ride. And you can see that the site is located in the east end of London. The central London area, the core of the city is in the middle there. And you can see there's 4 lines that are directly connected to the Olympic Village Stadium. Most of the other lines can have access to the site by one transfer. So this specific location is one of the best connected cities or spots in London. And so this is the locations of the public transportation facilities in reference to the site. The Stratford station is the regional station, which is served by the City of London tube system, and then Stratford International connects to the Eurostar train line, which connects this site to the rest of Europe. Brussels and Paris are less than a 3-hour train ride from this location, and most locations within the city, like I said, are less than 20 minutes. This is the regional station. It was developed prior to the selection of London for the 2012 Olympics. It had a little work done to it to increase its capacity for the Olympic Games. It is a relatively new and high-tech transportation hub for the city. And you can see the lines run through and connect the site. You can see the Olympic Stadium specifically in the background there. And then this is the international station, which connects to the Eurostar train line and connects to the rest of Europe. The bus system in London is also a quite viable form of public transportation. They have a fantastic bus system which covers most of the city. And you can see this is right outside of that regional station. There's a large bus hub. One of the other factors for the urban success of the site is its pedestrian mobility. You can see the conceptual basis for the site development was stitching these areas back into the surrounding communities. The different colors signify the different planned neighborhoods, and there are pedestrian connections throughout these areas to connect across the site, as well as stitching the site back into the existing neighborhoods and communities. This is a map from the Westfield Stratford City, which is the large retail complex associated with this development. As you can see, most of the park is accessible within a 20-minute walk. And these are just one example of the pedestrian bridges that were constructed as a way to connect this site across the public transportation lines and highways and other necessary items and make it pedestrian friendly. As you can see, there are still some challenges. Portions of the site are segregated from the surrounding communities by highways, and that's one of the difficulties with that. Public space was something that I wanted to look at as a urban strategy for activation. A lot of these developments are aimed at creating engaging public spaces. One of the critiques I have of these public spaces is they're have just open spaces with they're unprogrammed public spaces, so I don't think they achieved a level of activization that was the goal. Part of this might be because it's a newer development and it's only been a year since the Olympics, and it hasn't had time to fully gather its steam as a public urban space. But that was one of the critiques that I had. One of the strategies in the public spaces is to use exhibitions as a way to incorporate the community into the ongoing development of the site. These exhibitions are garnered at providing information to residents and users of the spaces, so they feel a part of this ongoing development. And this is an image of the parklands up from the Arsemidor orbit, which was one of the main sculptures and occupied spaces for the development of the games. It gives you a overlook of the whole park, and you can see a large planned park through the center of the site. One of the large goals of this development was to create one of the largest parks that has been developed in London in the last 100 years. And this parkland is to include biodiversity plans and wetlands to make the site ecologically sustainable as it continues on in its use. And then looking at the planning and the density associated with the development of the site, this is a figure ground study of the site just after the Olympic Games. This is showing all the temporary facilities removed and what remains as of my travel. This is the plan for 2030 in the ongoing legacy phase of the development. There are large retail districts, residential districts, office and multi-use districts, as well as community facilities associated with these as the legacy phase continues on through its development over the next 15, 20 years. Looking at the venues that remain, these include the Olympic Stadium and the Aquatic Center. These structures either remained wholly intact or have undergone some form of transformation to make them more suitable to the legacy phase of the development. A like I said, one of the overarching concepts of the development was to create a sustainable legacy of the park, and this included creating temporary structures so that infrastructure and structures were not in place that were not going to be used after the game, creating structures that were designed to transform after the games so that they became usable in the community and were not overbearing for the site and the necessary uses. Looking at some of the retail office space dispersed throughout the site, the idea was to spread a majority of the uses out throughout the site so there was an eclectic mix of programming throughout the site as a strategy for activating it at all times. And then housing developments, which are a large portion of the ongoing legacy phase, which is aimed at providing housing, high-quality housing for families, individuals, and a broad cross-section of the community. And then community spaces that are planned for the athletic village, which is the housing that is in place currently. As the communities continue to be designed, these community spaces will be incorporated in them, including schools, hospitals, and necessary facilities to serve the community. And looking at the overall master plan, which you can see has the river and the parkland through the middle as a green network to kind of connect the site and stitch it again back into the surrounding communities. Taking a closer look at housing, I was very interested in the kind of cross-section of the housing as a way to understand the mixture of users and residents associated with the park. It's a common understanding in urban planning that a diverse mixture of residents creates more sustainable communities. And so my goal was to look at housing specifically as how do they accommodate a large cross-section of residents in order to create these sustainable communities. And they have 5 separate neighborhoods planned. Each neighborhood is destined to have its own character. Again, they have 1 to 4 bedroom units planned in the athletic village, which is turning into East Village, London. It's designed to serve individuals up to families so that they achieve this broad cross-section of users and residents. Again, also looking to target various income levels with different amounts of private rentals, intermediate rentals, purchase options, and social housing. And then one of the main goals of the housing developments is to incorporate a diverse collection of housing typologies based on historical London housing types as a way to stitch this development back into the community and, again, achieve that diversity that was the goal of the housing development projects. You can see from the retail office for the housing units, the model that they have set up for the Athletes Village, it's high density urban block housing. The next development is targeted more towards family with lower density mu houses and row house typologies. And then looking at how the site development incorporated into the existing ecologies and how they supported that development. The large park that is developed through the middle of the site around the River Lee is designed to enhance the existing ecologies and also serve as a green network that connects pedestrians throughout the site, as well as bringing in biodiversity with a large cross-section of plants and animals native to the area. And the goal, again, is a sustainable ecology that can be an ongoing legacy for this development. Part of this was recovering the River Lee from its industrial brownfield character and returning it to the user as a form of recreation and the ongoing goal of the Olympics in general, as garnering to the athlete and encouraging physical activity for everyone. And you can see the stadium nestled within one of those wetland and biodiverse planting areas. some more wetland development, which is aimed at, again, cleaning up the river and providing biodiverse habitats. And looking at the adjacent developments that have occurred around the site since the public investment in the site itself, you can see there's a mixture of base retail with higher density residential. These developments have garnered the most critique from the community. The London Guardian critic specifically had some scathing remarks towards these, where there's a multitude of towers that go up. They're designed with 1 and 2 bedroom flats. They don't fit into the existing typologies and the existing character of the community, and they continue to rise, as he calls the greed of developers. And then I want to take a closer look at the venues that were designed for the Olympic Games. This is kind of a way for me to understand how these elements specifically were designed to activate the urban space at a building scale. The Olympic Stadium, the shooting venue, and the copper box are examples of the stadium as a structure that has undergone a transformation after the Olympics, reducing its seating capacity to be appropriate for its use. The Olympic shooting venue, which was a temporary structure, which has since been dismantled and is looking for a reuse. And then the copper box, which has maintained its use as a multi-use arena, serving concerts and athletic competitions. And then these 3 structures I'm going to take a closer look at for how they were integrated into the urban design of the facility. The aquatic center, which has undergone a transformation, the basketball arena, which is a temporary facility, and the velodrome, which maintained its character. And the aquatic center, designed by Zaha Hadid, is designed to be the gateway into the park. It underwent a large transformation after the Olympic Games. It was designed for the Olympic required seating was vastly greater than the necessary seating for community activities. So it was designed to be a temporary structure, again, in that concept of focusing on the sustainable legacy of the park. The structure was designed as a roof pavilion on a podium that would create public spaces in the urban level and open up at its base level to the urban activities around it. And you can see in this cross section here the Olympic phase compared to the legacy phase, where the volume is shrunk down as much as possible to reduce heating and cooling requirements, and again, with that concept of ongoing sustainability for the legacy community. And I think this section shows it very well, where you see the volume being squeezed down into the main portion of the facility, and again, that pavilion roof creating urban spaces underneath. And then looking at the basketball arena, which was designed by Wilkinson Eyre Architects, it was intended to be a temporary structure. As Jim Eyre stated, the UK doesn't play basketball, so there's no reason to keep a stadium. It was designed to look like a temporary structure because that's what it is. There were no foundations put in except for the basketball court. All of the actual elements of the structure were leased to the games from the contractors, who then were responsible for finding reuses for them. And from my understanding, most of the elements have found a reuse. And again, you can see through this cross-section the space frame as an entity, the PVC skin as its own entity, and then the scaffolding seating as its own entity, designed to be all temporary facilities. And a closer look at this skin and this super frame structure, you can see that it's lifted up at the urban level as a way to blur that boundary between the outside urban and the inside structure, and that's one of the urban concepts for the development. You can see out off in the distance, it's kind of standing alone, and that's one of the critiques I have for all the venues. Actually, is Most of them are placed on podiums kind of separate of any sort of urban fabric, and it's kind of counterintuitive, I think, to what their intentions were of creating urban spaces associated with these structures. And then looking at the velodrome designed by Hopkins Architects, this was one of the permanent facilities. It was designed to be permanent because of the heritage of cycling in the United Kingdom. It's one of their greatest events in the Olympics, and it's a passion in the country. A look at some of the urban setup. Again, the roof structure is designed as a pavilion, and it's opened up at the urban level to connect to the urban areas on the outside. It's again on a podium. It's one of my critiques about the integration of the structures into the urban environment. The concept of the structure is really based on the track. The track is essential to the speed of the cyclist, and that was one of the ongoing concepts for the development was how do we make the fastest track, and the actual response of the structure is a inverse relationship to the track because of the seating requirements associated with it, where you have the steepness of the track at the ends. There's low visibility, so the seating is less and it's squished down at these ends, and then it expands on the straightaway portions where the seating is more valuable. And you can see this double curvature roof is an inverse relationship to the track. One of the outcomes of this double curvature roof that squeezes in, along with that sustainable concept of reducing the volume and making the structure as sustainable for the community as possible, they were able to reduce the steel in the roof to 30 kilograms per meter squared, which is minuscule compared to the Bird's Nest Stadium in Beijing for the 2008 Olympics, which had 285 kilograms of steel per meter squared. And looking at that section, you see the double curvature that is in inverse response to the track, and the squeezing of the volume in the main spaces is a way to, again, reduce that heating and cooling volume. And looking at the urban approach where the roof is lifted to connect the building into the outside urban community, again, on a podium by itself, separate from the urban fabric. In summary, the lessons that I learned from this research is that an important part of urban activization is connecting to public transport. That, along with interconnected pedestrian networks, create active urban spaces. Designing public spaces as programmed entities to engage the community are important for the ongoing uses of these public spaces. This diversity of typologies and densities creates active and eclectic urban developments. And again, integrating the structures into that urban fabric becomes an important part of making those structures part of the urban spaces. And then part of the outcome of this research was to look at potential strategies that could be applied to the city of Detroit, which relies heavily on the event as its catalyst for urban activation. And one of the hopes is that this discussion can lead into ongoing design approaches to create spaces that actively engage the urban fabric and can be a catalyst for regeneration in the area. The area that I'm looking at specifically is around Comerica Park and the Fox Theater and Ford Field as the ongoing theme of athletic venues and cultural venues for the event. And comparing the size, you can see there's a smaller portion of area here for them compared to the Olympic Park, but the density is more associated with an urban fabric as opposed to the park setup that the Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park had. Based on kind of a figure ground study, I saw some intervention opportunities. These are underdeveloped areas that can be activated with density and network connections based on some of the lessons that were learned from the London Olympic Village, some of the planned public transport opportunities. These are avenues that are targeted for public transport in the Detroit Future Cities plan. As you can see, they kind of develop around the site and provide nice boundaries and connections for the site. And then looking at some of the pedestrian connection opportunities that can stitch this site into its surrounding existing neighborhoods. And then just a quick kind of figure ground study for what opportunities are available. It's looking at mixing in diverse typologies, diverse programmed uses, and kind of doing some of the things that are essential to activating the urban fabric. One of the strategies that the Olympic Village used to connect the development into the fabric was this idea of pedestrian mobility, and they used the park as a green network. And one of the themes from my master's studio that I'm continually interested in is creating a new urban layer at an elevated level that respects the existing urban fabric and also provides opportunities for new green networks as a way of creating pedestrian mobility throughout the urban fabric. That concludes my presentation. Again, I want to thank the committee for selecting me and everyone that was involved in making this happen, and thank you very much. And I would like to open it up for questions. The question again was, are there things that they did that were working well? I think that one of the things that they did was using the park as a green network. I think that's very intelligent as a way to integrate ecologies into the urban development, as well as provide pedestrian mobility throughout the urban fabric. I think their approach to diverse typologies is a strong strategy for creating active and engaged communities, and also achieving that diversity of community that they were searching for.
Yeah, sure. I've got a question for you.
Absolutely.
You made comment that the tube is a strong public transportation system. A few years ago, it was really there was huge riots that actually shut it down, right? Going back just a couple years in the history of the tube. So I was curious, in your research of Olympic Village, have you perhaps witnessed maybe improved social and economic conditions that now actually strengthen the tube, perhaps preventing it from being shut down due to riot?
The question was, how do I feel about the way the tube has developed since some social outcry against this development? I think some of the recent developments that have taken place in the development of the tube system, the station that I mentioned at Stratford, which was part of the Olympic Village development, again, it's starting to connect more of the central area into some of the underserved communities that are not part of the central London area. And I think, from my experience, that has been successful. I can't say that as a community as a whole, everyone's happy with it. I didn't have that experience of asking everyone. My personal experience is that the tube was very successful as to connecting me through a diverse cross-section of the city.
Stitching together a couple of pieces of what you talked about, one of your critiques was these sort of events set up on platforms. And then we talked about the city of Detroit where the great
That's actually the question is, what are my feelings on my criticism of the stadiums on the podium, and then talking about an elevated green network in the city of Detroit, which has a large availability of grade land. That's actually, I think, that specific subject is one of my critiques of the discussion with Detroit, is that there's so much land available. Why should we do dense development? Why should we look at high-rise developments when we can do 3-4 story buildings and we have all the land to do it? And I think that's counterintuitive to what the urban fabric needs to be a successful urban fabric. At the scale of Detroit, I think a more dense urban fabric is appropriate, and creating these elevated green networks, I think, are a way of stitching that idea of a pedestrian accessible network while also respecting this idea of a dense urban fabric. Yes.
So a lot of the majority of the buildings you showed seem to be very foreground buildings, and they're kind of screaming me, and setting themselves up, color pedestals and something. You showed a few examples of some proposed buildings that built on some older typologies that were part of the city of London. So what is the balance between these foreground buildings and what we might call a background building, or a building that's just part of a neutral fabric community? What's the ratio that you think is appropriate for new development?
The question is, what are my feelings on the ratio of kind of key venue type facilities and the background diverse typology type neutral structures?
I don't even know if it's the use that's so important, because those housing projects seem to be they were vying for attention as well as the sports teams, right? They were both trying to shout pretty loudly. I would think I would like to think about it more before I say a specific ratio. I'm not going to hold you to a specific number.
I think the planned ratio that they have for 2030, where they had 5 or 6 key venues and the rest was kind of retail infill and housing refill, I think that is a much more successful relationship, where a majority of the structures are designed as structures that are going to be used more frequently, I guess I would say. I think the event structure, the look at me structure is more associated with short-term events, whereas some of the infill typologies are more utilitarian in their urban use, and I think that relationship between the two is important for activating the urban fabric at all times, unlike kind of the situation that we have in Detroit, where the urban fabric is active during events and otherwise it's quite empty. So I think a ratio that leans more heavily on the infill as opposed to the venue typologies is more successful as an urban approach. Yes.
What is the Olympic Park design for the park? Does it have like people living in it?
The first residents moved into the athletic village this summer. So the athletic village underwent a transformation after the games into apartment complexes. They were originally designed more as a dormitory type setup, where there's 3 or 4 athletes per room, and now they've been kind of transformed into 1, 2, 3, and 4 bedroom apartments that are targeted at a more diverse cross section of the community, looking to serve individuals as well as families. Throughout the history of kind of the Olympic development, cities have used the Olympics as ways to regenerate separate areas of their cities, and I think that's a similar strategy that London has done. They've hosted the Olympics before in different areas, so I would gesture that they would not try to use the same area again if they were to host a future Olympics. My thought process is they would probably target a different area of the city for development for the Olympics. Yeah. Hmm? Yes. I was actually my notions going into the research were that the development would be more successful, I think, than it was. I thought, I would get there and the fabric would be active and it would be wonderful and I wouldn't have any criticisms. And after doing the research and being on the ground and canvassing the park for a few days, I changed my opinion about it. Yes.
I think we're just to follow up in a few years and see if it becomes more successful, how further development begins to fill out this idea of some sort of urban, a real community.
I would hope to go back. I would love to. I would go tomorrow if I could. I had a wonderful time in London. I am very interested to see the ongoing legacy of the park, based on their concepts and their planning and their goals for the park. I'd be very interested to see, 5, 10, 15 years and 2030 at the culmination of their kind of urban plan, how successful the development has been.
Maybe the college has to establish a mid-career travel study.
Yes. With Eric in mind, first.
I support that notion.
Someone else will have to keep here to figure it out. But, as you realize, cities aren't made overnight. Typically, cities, the ones we really think of as great cities, are built over centuries.
Mm-hmm.
But certainly, I'm going back there 10 years from now, and we're doing to see what's happening.
Absolutely. One of the key items that I took from my overall travel in London and going to different areas of the city is the way they've kind of stitched continuing contemporary development into this rich historical tradition that the city has. And that ongoing development that has been hundreds of years is quite fascinating, and I think it's led to that rich urban fabric that exists in the city of London. And 1 year after the event, I didn't expect it to be perfect. There's ongoing development that needs to take place, but yes, I agree that this is an ongoing process that takes a long time, and I'd be interested in seeing that. All right.
Have you ever find out, like, way back in time, like, when first London was built, did you ever find out why it's built in a particular location where it's cold, possibly, something like that?
There's lots of history into why cities develop where they do. The city of London, particularly, is located right on the River Thames, which is a huge connection. And as cities developed in historical times, rivers were a huge form of transportation and access to water for farming and et cetera. So I think that was one of the key components of its specific location. There's lots of various reasons. I'm not going to propose to be a historical expert on why London developed the way it did, and and where it did, but those are just some of my understandings.
I know some cities that around the world built that post DJ, I was thinking that people want to live there don't like a lot of rain every day. That's my point of view.
I think they all moved to Spain.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a diverse ecological cross-section through Europe, so there's lots of close opportunities.
Eric, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So let's move along here with the second part of our program. This is the part where we'd like to recognize nominees for this year. I should say something quickly about the process while Eric's getting stuff together. Would that be okay if I did that for a
Sure,
minute?
yeah, let's go.
What you need to know, especially for those of you who are undergraduates, is that at the end of at or near the end of the graduate program, the faculty nominates a group of students. Each faculty usually nominates one student that he or she thinks deserves recognition because of his or her work, particularly in design, but all through the program. And we ask each of these nominated students if they'd like to make a proposal for a travel study project, which is what resulted in Eric's project here. But we have a number of proposals every year. The proposals that we received this year are laid out on the table in front. So as you leave this evening, you're welcome to take a look and see what those are. And we want you to think about this because we would like to encourage you to work toward this as you move through the program. This is something that's available to you, something that we are particularly pleased to be able to do. I wish we could do more of this if we could have more such fellowships, something we'd like to work on in the future. So I think what we'd like to do now is to read the names of the nominees, graduate student nominees for this year, and then we will announce the winner, the fellow for 2013.
Yep.
So do you want me to read them,
Yep.
or do you have, I guess I better read them off of this because I don't.
think you are perfectly welcome to go.
Okay, and as I hope that some of these people are with us tonight, because we are pleased to recognize you. Zachary Funk, Zachary here, come on up. And actually, I should read them and then hand them to Kathleen, and then Kathleen. Lauren Hetzel, is Lauren here? Okay, we'll put that one down. Amanda Kite. Is Amanda here? I know Amanda. Is she not here? Give a round of applause. I know Nathan Fisher is not here. I heard from him. He regrets that he cannot join us tonight. Kyle Van Klompenberg. Where's Kyle? No? Has Zayat. Has? John Galwa. Christopher Davis. Is Christopher here? Why don't you give this one? Natalie Haddad. There's Natalie. Natalie? Elizabeth Hager. Is Elizabeth here? Justin Dipple. Is Justin here? Hey, there he is. Justin? Yes. Who would like to announce the
I
winner,
have
the
a
fellow?
spiel,
Oh,
yeah.
Kathleen would like to speak, so I'll step aside for a minute.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you, Eric, and thank you all the nominees that came to accept your certificate. And all of the proposals were very interesting to read. But first, I'd like to reiterate, Martin already said this a little bit, and I said it earlier, that the Pellerin Traveling Fellowship honors one faculty-nominated meritorious graduate student annually. And this is actually a huge honor and a great opportunity for all students, so you should really strive to achieve this and be the top of your class. All of the nominated students have shown and demonstrated exceptional talent in their studio and in their thesis works. All of the submitted proposals had unique focuses with the intention of utilizing the travel study as an extension of their work they completed through their thesis. While all of the proposals were compiled fairly well, there were common pitfalls amongst the applicant submissions. And I'm only saying this so that future use, all of you students that are striving for this know what to look out for, so keep this in mind. A significant amount of the submissions were underdeveloped in the theoretical and practical sense. The frameworks for a concise travel study were not there. The travel study was developed for educational purposes, which should be filled with scheduled meetings, research, interviews, and time should be spent harvesting educational information that benefits the travel study proposal, which in itself is a personal gain as well as a gain for your design community here back at home. The travel study is not meant for one to travel for their own personal leisure, but for the leisure of the design travel study itself. A majority of the time in the selection committee meeting, we discussed only a few proposals as they stood out amongst all of the others. A few to note: Elizabeth Hager, Natalie Hadid, and Christopher Davis. Your proposals were precise, had precision, focus, clear, concise travel plans, and contacts, which most have already been contacted with possible meeting dates. They provided a degree of relevance that can relate not only to the local community, but communities around the world. I would like to congratulate the three of you for standing out in that notion. This year's recipient provided a proposal that was well conceived and compelling. The content became a hinge to the work and research that was completed during their thesis and graduate studies, while following the criterion required for the fellowship proposal. This student has pushed himself to take an opportunity, strive amongst the architectural critics with hopes to continue on with this discussion once their fellowship travel is completed. The precision and notion of this proposal can resulted in a clearly rooted, significant conversation with the students, faculty, and alumni of the university. The title of this year's winning proposal is India. This proposal charted the clearest terrain and trajectory. I would like to congratulate the 2013 Pellerin Traveling Fellowship recipient, Christopher Davis. I'm not done, sorry. Christopher's travel study proposal focus is refined and closely relates to research and work amongst a few professors here at Lawrence Tech, focusing on the digital vernacular. Christopher has an intense travel schedule which includes visiting 5 cities, meeting with and interviewing numerous native designers in India, collaborating with university professors while studying the laws of nature and how they affect human dwellings, while pairing this philology with the digital vernacular and applying it to a new design methodology. His hopes are to identify local vernaculars, foreign styles, and cultural issues to set the application stage of the digital. It is in his interest to suggest an adaptive design methodology based on place and context. The result of this work emphasizes Earl Pellerin's beliefs that travel is an part of an architect's career. And I would like to ask Christopher to say a few words and indicate what his travel plans are, and congratulations.
First, I'd just like to say thank you for the opportunity to continue traveling abroad and studying. I think Lawrence Tech does a really good job at giving its students opportunities to travel outside of Southfield to get really good perspective on the world. I've had the opportunity to travel to China and to Albania on several design workshops, and with that, coupled with a theory class I took called Digital Vernacular, I was realizing that in today's world, we don't really see a big difference sometimes between places. And I think that's something that architecture needs to strive for, is using technology not only to create sustainable and beautiful active buildings, but also to create place and to have an identity. I chose India because India has a lot of influences from many different cultures, and with many cultural issues of pollution and population, clean water, I think it's a great place to look at where was India and where is it now, and where can it potentially be with the use of digital vernacular. I propose traveling to 5 different cities because I would like to get a really good sense of place. And place doesn't just occur just in India. There's multiple different places there. And I would like to use that to see if I can form some sort of groundwork for where they were and who they could potentially be, while solving many issues that not only that country has, but a lot of countries have. Again, I'd like to say thank you and congratulations to all the nominees. I'm sure it wasn't very easy to make this decision.
All right, that concludes our evening, and if anybody has any questions about anything, just feel free to ask. And congratulations to Eric and Christopher and all of the nominees, and we'll see you next year at Christopher's presentation and next year's fellowship nominee announcement.